All right, hi everyone. So I want to make a video on the anniversary of the conquest of Constantinople by Mehmed the Conqueror in 1453. I'm not really gonna go into like details about uh, the kind of military operations. I mostly wanted to talk about sort of the lead up and afterward, what happened afterward. Because I think when we look at this situation, we would think, why wouldn't kind of the Europeans respond to this threat against, the Christian, the Eastern Christian city of Constantinople, what was happening, um, and there's a good article by the historian Kelly DeVries talking about more so about responses, lack of responses to the kind of the Ottoman invasions that involved Hungary, and Hungary is actually kind of the linchpin, surprisingly. The consensus in the early 14th century among like England, France, and the Holy Roman Empire was, that as long as the Kingdom of Hungary existed, they would take care of, they were kind of the bulwark against Ottoman expansion. Uh, and just to be transparent, I do have a lot of admiration for the Hungarian kingdom. Politically and culturally, it was a very, I think, advanced, especially by the 15th century, well-developed kingdom. Culturally, quite strong, at least in the urban areas. Of course, that was promoted a lot by the uh, where I get the name for my channel, Matthias Corvinus, the Raven King of Hungary. But anyway, the point for the siege of Constantinople was that the European states didn't really focus on the kind of East or Central Europe, and the Hungarians were there to kind of keep things covered in their point of view. And we also have to keep in mind that the beginning from the late 14th century, late 15th century up to the siege, the Hundred Years' War is still occurring. So England and France don't want to really become involved. I think there's also even I think in Joan of Arc, when Saint Joan of Arc, when she is with the French army during her lifetime, I think she even tells the French king or one of the generals, supposedly, that we need to like just stop this war with the English, and we need to go do a crusade. That's what God wants us to do, sort of thing. So I think there was always this tension of between the princes in Europe, or the kings in Europe, of wanting to fight each other, and versus this Ottoman threat. And I think I haven't read the histories of those kingdoms in great detail, but I would think probably it was easier for them to fight each other than it would be to organize something to take on the Ottomans. I mean, just logistically, it would be really challenging. Trying to not just get the armies together, but also keep them supplied. Traveling um, to either the Balkans or Anatolia. So it was difficult, and the Hungarians were right there in a sense on the frontier. For the Ottomans, what was their stake in all this? Well, strategically, just sort of the nuts and bolts. I mean, they had surrounded Constantinople for some time leading up to the siege, and this is a really important strategic position. It connects, the Mediterranean to the Black Sea, and so by extension, for the trade, especially at that time, you have land trade that goes on in the steppes north of the Black Sea, that connects up with Russia and Poland. At the Poland was much larger, of course, in this period. And then you can connect that with the Aegean and the Mediterranean, and you would command kind of both seas, and that's what the Ottomans end up doing. And the Ottomans had besieged Constantinople multiple times. They'd just never been successful until 1453. Um, and that this was a major, I think you could say, or I would say at least, that this is where taking Constantinople was really what transformed the Ottoman dynasty from a kind of sultanate, a more medieval kingdom, let's say, into a real proper, an empire that tries to command more universal legitimacy. And that's gets into the rhetoric and kind of the image that Mehmed the Conqueror tries to articulate. It's believed that his mother was possibly Greek or a Balkan uh, princess. That had happened actually before Mehmed the Conqueror. A lot of the mothers and the wives of the Ottoman sultans were princesses or from the Balkans or from Byzantium. In fact, Mehmed the Conqueror actually ends this because he thinks marriage alliances are kind of below them at that by then. Excuse me. So, he is supposedly kind of reared on Greek and Roman stories, and then he declares himself, the Caesar of Rome. I think this people, and this is where I'll editorialize a bit, but this is where I think people get carried away, where they invest too much into the kind of rhetoric. Did Mehmed the Conqueror have an idea of what, the Roman Empire, like of Julius Caesar or Augustus, was like? It's hard to say, probably not. And, the Ottoman institutions and style of governance, even during his time and after, was a lot more rooted in the kind of Islamic tradition. Although, when they do take Constantinople in 1453, a lot of the Byzantine elites do convert to Islam and become kind of part of the Ottoman uh, elite ruling class. For example, the commander for the 1480 siege of Rhodes is a member of uh, the last Byzantine ruling family. So I think he's a nephew or a son. I can't remember. But if you look up Messi Pasha, that's who he was. He was a Byzantine uh, who became turned Ottoman. But the point is I think I don't really see this title being used a lot. Although it does speak in later kind of documents or sources, although it does speak to um, Mehmed the Conqueror's ambition that he wants to he wants the state to be more universal. Uh, the idea that Rome is like the kind of world empire, so he wants to appeal not just to the Islamic world or to Turks, uh, but to kind of a larger base of subjects. I guess that might lead into what happened to the people in Constantinople and the Greek population. They didn't disappear. I think this is kind of a misunderstanding when we look at these imperial conquests, especially in the early modern world, or even in the late medieval world. Just because a dynasty conquers something doesn't mean the population disappears, or they're changed completely because they don't have a government. That's certainly not true. The Greek population, especially in Constantinople, is many of them are killed or die as a result of the siege and the sack, which is particularly vicious. And Mehmed the Conqueror does resettle a lot of Muslims in the district of Fatih in the city. It's not actually renamed Istanbul as a consequence of this. That's kind of a misunderstanding. They use they use Constantinople, Constantiniye. They use which comes from the old Arabic rendition. They use Istanbul sometimes, and then they'll also occasionally use Istanbul. It's all used. They use all the names basically. Anyway, that's kind of a detour, but the Greeks don't disappear fully. In fact, eventually the Greek urban middle class in the empire becomes quite powerful as their sort of entrepreneurial. Eventually they'll be known as the Phanariates, quite prominent, and some of the families are extremely wealthy. So the Greeks don't all disappear, and in fact, the kind of let's say Muslim military class is a minority, and even kind of Islamic or Muslim commoners are also a minority in many places. So, for example, when Suleiman the Magnificent is born in Trabzon, in to his father Selim, and that'll be about in 50 or so years after this. The city is still mostly Greek. Um, so just because the Byzantine state falls, that doesn't mean that the Byzantine people, the Greek population, just disappeared. That or were they were all killed or something. That didn't happen like that. Although you do have refugees, of course, that leave and go to places in Italy and that sort of thing. So not obviously not everyone is going to be happy with the new ruler. Um, so I think I'll try and wrap this one up. I don't really have much more to add. Um, there's many books about this, about the siege and kind of the aftermath. A lot of them I'm sort of thinking of one in particular that I'm sort of leery of, but there's plenty of information about it. It did come as a shock to the Europeans, which is kind of ironic given that they didn't really pay attention to, really resisting the Ottoman threat, or Ottoman expansion. But it was new. The news of this traveled really quickly, and it was seen as like the Byzantines finally collapsed. I think the last Byzantine emperor, Constantine the 11th, did the best with what he had to make the best of a bad situation. But obviously, it was a great tragedy for him, and he unfortunately died during the siege, which maybe for a medieval ruler, that's probably the best way to die. At least you die, fighting for your subjects, but still tragic, I think, nevertheless. Um, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of consequence of this, in world history of, the ultimate collapse of Byzantium, or, the remnants of it, um, and the firm establishment of the Ottoman Empire in Constantinople. You know, but I think if anything, if if anything, I'd just like to continue with my message from my previous video that when we talk about events like this, especially in the pre-modern world, I think it's helpful to try to understand that, these were all contingencies, and, there were choices of the various rulers that could have altered the outcome, maybe not. I mean, we can't know, that gets into kind of sort of counterfactual or, alternative history, which I'm leery of, but, it is important to think about contingencies and, not to view kind of these events as unfolding mechanically, that it was a sort of it was a given that the Ottoman Empire would have captured Constantinople or you know anything like that. But they did, and it does speak well to Mehmed the Conqueror, I think, as a general and a ruler, that he was able to organize all of that, and that's kind of the main advantage of the imperial military for the next at least almost 250 years, is its pretty strong logistical system and organization that uh, the kind of feudal armies of Europe will have to kind of catch up with, and eventually the Habsburgs in particular do, and are able to be a strong match for the Ottoman Empire. But well, I think I'll just wrap it up there. I mean, it's certainly not by no means the last word on this topic, and it's a pretty big event in world history. So there's always, I think, new ways of looking at it, both the events themselves and then how they're remembered, which is not exactly the same thing. But anyway, I hope you found this discussion at least interesting, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.